Well, hello there, everyone. It is Sunday, February the 27th, and I have a very special guest who's become one of the favorite guests on my channel, I dare say. So I'd like to welcome to the channel once again, Millennial Mike. So go ahead and take it, Mike.
Hey, how's it going? And I think you almost said one of the favorite viewers of the channel, which is also true. I am a favorite viewer of your channel and your first official subscriber back in the day. So what I thought we would talk about today is that we were going to cover the 5 things that you actually need to buy your first investment property. It's a good refresher for those of us who maybe have already been investing, but for the people out there who haven't bought their first one, I want you to pay attention because we're going to go over the 5 things that you actually need to buy your first investment property. So the first thing I'm going to talk about is a W-2 job. Mark, go ahead and tell us why that's important.
Sure. Well, when you first get started as a real estate investor, one thing your lender, a conventional bank, what they're going to look at is they want 2 years of documented income, which is typically W-2 income. So if you work a job, could be you're a cop, firefighter, paramedic, work in a hospital, you're a teacher, that's a W-2 job. Work in a factory, it's a W-2 job. So they look at that. Now, they look at it, so you got to have like documented income, you've been working a while, job history. But with that being said, say if you're self-employed, certain lenders can look at it as long as you have a good track history and you have your income taxes. Or let's just say you have no job, but you got a little bit of money and you want to buy a rental property, perhaps you can use a non-QM lender, but we're really not going to talk on that topic right now. So, all right, so go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, so this is for the basic folks who are probably going to try to use traditional lending. A non-QM lender may be able to lend you, help you out. And for those of you out there who are self-employed, it is a little more tricky. But at the end of the day, you're going to probably have to show 2 years of income at a level consistent to be able to pay back a loan. The lender wants to verify you bring in enough money to pay back the loan they're going to borrow to you on. The only caveat to this, the only exception, our friend Darius has a 4-year degree and then got a job in the field that he has his degree in. And so the lender was able to use his 4-year degree as part of the time. So he only had a year of job experience. And so he was still able to get a loan with traditional financing because he got a job in the field his 4-year degree is in. That's the only exception I know of. But that's the W-2 income job. Go ahead, Mark.
Yeah, I'll give one other quick little note here. My tenant, Robbie, who bought my triplex, he's self-employed, he owns his own business. And he went through Jerry Padilla with Prime Lending. And Jerry told him basically he needed 2 years of his income on his tax records. So he had to provide two years worth of tax records showing that he had income, and he was good to go then.
So don't just get paid under the table if you're planning on qualifying for a loan. All right. So the number 2 thing that you need is credit. Even though it makes Dave Ramsey extremely unhappy, having a higher credit score is beneficial. Mark, talk to us about that.
Sure, I was tripping over my words there a little bit. Yeah, but having a good credit score, like my credit score now usually runs anywhere from 780 to 810. And lenders have told me that I qualify for whatever their best interest rate is. Now, with that being said, let's say your credit score is 620, 660, 720. You can still qualify for a mortgage for the most part. And I can't remember off the top of my head, Mike probably knows, there is a bottom number where if you're below that, most lenders won't look at it. So, but the higher your credit score is, just the better interest rate you can typically get. So anyway, Mike, do you recall what the lowest number is?
I'm pretty sure that it's 580. I think it's 580 credit score is the lowest you can have and still be approved for a loan. However, you will be paying a higher interest rate. So when you see rates advertised like a 3.15 interest rate, you're going to be 0.5% higher than that. You're probably going to be like a 3.65 or something. And then the highest bracket starts at 760. So you could have an 850 credit score, which is a perfect score, but you can still get that same perfect rate even if your credit score is as low as 760, which is actually where mine usually is. Mine's around the 780, 790 area. It gets beat up all the time because I'm always getting inquiries as I apply for more loans for more properties. If I just sat back and did nothing for 3 or 4 years, then it'd be an 850. So, but yeah, 760 and above is what you want to aim for to get the best rates. But if you're not there yet, don't worry about it. You can still get a loan. That loan can help build better credit for you. You can refinance or get a different loan later at a better rate. The third thing we want to talk about is the down payment. So you need a job, you need good credit. You want to get a rental property. Maybe you found one you like. How are you actually going to buy it? You have to come up with a down payment. Mark?
That is correct. And a down payment typically for lenders I've dealt with is a 20% down payment. Some lenders do require 25%, and maybe an occasional lender might require 30%. But let's just assume that your lender is going to charge you 20%. So if you're buying a house for 100 grand, for easy math, that's $20,000 you'll need to save up to provide the down payment. Now, with that being said, a side note is there are ways to get a loan with a smaller down payment, but typically you need at least a 20% down payment. All right, so your turn, Mike.
Yeah, I agree. So if you are like me and you don't have a ton of money or you live in an expensive area, or both, you didn't have a ton of money and you live in an expensive area like me in Seattle, one of the ways you can get around saving a 20% down payment is to owner occupy your first rental property. You do what's called house hacking. You can either buy one big house and rent out some of the rooms to your friends, or you can do what I did, which is buy a duplex. I live in one side and have a roommate, and then I rent the other side out and I bring that income in every month. Now, when you do owner occupied financing, you can get in with as little as 3.5% down. For those of you who live in extremely expensive areas like me, where a house, this duplex I'm in, was $450,000, I put 5% down on it in a conventional loan, and I was able to get it with only 21 grand saved up and put into the deal, instead of the 20% that I would have had to put on a $450,000 loan, which would have been 90 grand. It would have taken me a lot longer to save. But at the end of the day, you do still have to save a down payment, whether it's 3.5%, 5%, 10%, or 20%. Keep that in mind. That's another good reason to have your job. Put that money away, save it, make sure that you're saving it and getting ready for your rental. And then when the time comes, you'll be ready to jump on the right one. Okay, the fourth thing you need to do before you buy your first rental is you need to have some sort of knowledge about rentals and knowledge about the market you're looking to get into. So Mark, talk to us about that.
Sure. When you first buy your first rental, or before you buy your first rental, you really need to study your market, or study the market that you're buying in, whatever market that is. Learn what the numbers are. Learn their basic rules that not all real estate investors go by, such as an easy one's the 1% rule. House costs $100,000, it should rent for at least $1,000. Now, with that being said, that's not a given, it's a good deal, but it's a guide to go by, especially as a new investor. But you got to make sure you run the numbers and just learn the market the best you can. Read. There's a great book you can read, I think, that is, I can't think of the title. It's a Bigger Pockets book by Brandon Turner, and it's all about how to get started with your first property. And it's, a fairly thick book. So it has a ton of information in there, including managing tenants. Because if you want to self-manage, that's a whole that's a whole book by itself on self-managing. Okay. So anyway, I'm talking off on a tangent here. So back to you, Mike.
Yeah. So when it comes to having knowledge, you need to know about a couple of different things. Number one, you need to know what type of property you're looking for. You need to know what anticipated yield you're going to get. You need to know what you anticipate the rents for that area will be for that type of property. If you don't have a very intimate knowledge of exactly what you're looking for, so you can compare and contrast any property with any other given property, you're not ready to buy yet. Mark and I and the guys in our group, we're all looking for 3-bedroom, 1-bath houses priced between $60,000 to $100,000 in a certain zip code, ideally with an updated roof and flooring and stuff like that. If you can't get very specific with the size and style and the makeup of the property, and you're like, okay, one day I looked at some duplexes, the next day I looked at some 5-bedroom houses, then I looked at possible student rental studio apartments, you're too vague, you're going to get lost in the sauce, you're going to get analysis paralysis. Narrow in on a specific type of property, and then look at only those properties over a given amount of time, be it a couple of months up to maybe even a year. You can be studying a market while you're saving your down payment. I encourage you to start today, so that you know what a good deal is. Because when you see that good deal compared to the other hundreds of deals you've already looked at, and you go, wow, this one's amazing, you'll have all the confidence and bravery to jump on it, even though you might be a little hesitant because it's still your first one. Last topic that we need. So we talked about you need the W-2 job. That's how you're going to save your down payment and prove to a lender you can pay the loan back. You have to have good credit. That's another way of proving to the lender you can pay the loan back. You got to save the down payment. You have to have knowledge about the market and what you want to do. But the last final thing is probably the most important, and that's the grit, the determination, the drive, the motivation to keep going even when bad things happen. So Mark, tell us a story about your first rental property experience.
Sure. And you hit on the key thing there. You got to have the grit, the drive, the determination, the motivation to keep going. Because trust me, bad things will happen. It may happen on your first rental like it did with me. It may happen on your 10th rental, but somewhere along the way, bad things will happen. My first tenant, when I jumped into it, the things we're talking about, I had the W-2 income, I had the down payment. I did not have the knowledge of my local market. I did not know how to manage tenants, but I just jumped into it because that's kind of my personality. I jump into things. So when I jumped into it, I had enough knowledge to know how to buy a good rental. I did not know how to get a good tenant. And that tenant literally flashed $100 bills in front of me for that first deposit rent check. And I remember seeing it. It's like, oh, she meets my criteria. And look, she has the cash right here, right now. And I fell for it. It's kind of like the oldest trick in the book that landlords will tell you about. When they flash the cash, that's a red flag right there. I did not realize this. It was a red flag. Yes, I did get that first month rent. I got the second month rent, and then it stopped. And there was excuse after excuse. There was crying when I talked to her in person to serve paperwork to her. There was fish clenching when I told her, you're not spending the night here because the sheriff's department's been at the house and they told you cannot spend the night here. And I was a police officer, and I was like, don't throw a punch at me, because if you do, you're going to lie about saying this guy hit me first and I'm a cop and I'm going to have to defend myself because she's going to lie about what happened. So, but anyway, she did not throw a punch at me. It did stress me out because I had to take her to court. And even in court, I was sitting in the front row waiting on my turn. And the secretary walked into the judge, and I heard her ask the judge something to the effect, hey, Miss Such and Such just called. She said her kids are sick, she can't make it. And the judge turned and looked at the clock and's like, well, the case was 9 o'clock and now it's 9:10. Tell her, sorry, we're holding the case anyway. And that was my case. That was just an example of the tenant. She couldn't pay me on time and she couldn't even show up in court on time. So anyway, go ahead, Mike.
I think the important thing here to remember is, like Mark said, unfortunately, day one, you buy your first rental. You finally closed on it. You're so excited to get it rented, and boom, the pipes burst in the middle of the night, flood the basement. You got to repair. Your very first tenant, Mark's very first tenant, Michael Zuber's very first tenant. They came in and they tried to take advantage of Mark. They flashed cash and, oh, okay, all right, well, perfect. I'll get it rented to this person, but that person knew exactly what they were doing. If I pay 1 month now, I can probably get in for 3 or 4 months for free before I finally get evicted. There are pros out there who will try to take advantage of you, and you got to be aware of that type of stuff. But at the end of the day, the only way you get through whatever the problem might be, and this goes for any aspect of life, is if you have the drive, determination, the grit to keep moving forward, to keep progressing, no matter what the challenge may be. So make sure that you front load your own expectations with bad things are going to happen. I am going to plan for the worst and hope for the best. And that's how you're going to be successful. I think that's all I got, Mark. So why don't you take us home?
All right. Sounds good, Mike. And I won't share more stories, but I've dealt with literally everything. I'll share it real quick. I have replaced roofs. I've replaced sewer lines, toilets, vanities, sinks, mirrors. I've had a water line break in a house the tenant just happened to be away for a couple of weeks. So it did flood the house, and so on and so on and so on. And if all that stuff happened to my very first house, I wouldn't be here right now because I would have been overwhelmed. Fortunately, everything I just said, I've had upwards of 26, 27 rentals altogether. I have sold some. And the more you get, things will happen. Evictions will happen. Even if you have 5 rentals now, nothing bad's ever happened. Trust me, something will. So, all right. So with all that being said, any final words for you, Mike, or we'll close this out.
I appreciate you for having me on the channel as always. Please like Mark's videos, follow him, subscribe to him on YouTube. He's the most accessible, experienced YouTuber that there probably is that you can actually get responses from. So support him, help him grow. If you don't want to see fake gurus and loud, obnoxious people on the front of your feed every day, then help promote his channel and do your best to like the video and follow him.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Mike. And please follow Millennial Mike as well. His channel is easy to find. It's Millennial Mike. So for Millennial Mike and Mazske Finance, I will be signing out, and we'll come back to you next week with a similar topic. So take care. And as always, stay safe.